In the interest of time, I'm going to be brief with this introduction. It's my pleasure to introduce Allison Clark. Allison is one of 4 exchange students that we sent out last year, and she spent the year in Slovakia, and she's here to give us an exciting recap of that year. Allison.
Dobrý den, volám se Allison Clark. Byla jsem výjimečná studentka na Slovensku v Spišské Nové Vsi. Hello, I'm Allison Clark, and I was an exchange student in Spišská Nová Ves, Slovakia, for this entire year. I'm going to start out by talking a bit about the culture of Slovakia that's different from things here. The food was my favorite thing that was different. Why wouldn't it be? But it was amazing. This food up here is called halushki. It's the national dish of Slovakia, and it's basically potato dumplings put with sheep cheese on top. It's a special type of cheese that can only be found in Slovakia. It's called brinza. So this is halushki with bacon bits on top. It was one of my favorite dishes of all. Food in general is also different. It tends to be more meat and potatoes and less vegetables. A lot of people don't consider anything green as actually a food. It's just meant to be decoration on the plate. It's not meant to be. The types of housing that they have is different as well. This is the very stereotypical picture of Slovakia, communist-looking flats. This is actually the building where my first host family lived. So there are houses like that. 70% of the population of my town lived in apartments like these. But there's also, these are kind of bland-looking ones, but they're generally very brightly colored. People, after communism and socialism left the area, they chose to paint their buildings like pink and yellow and very fun colors. So normally, houses are actually pretty bright, and they're very fun. My second and third host families lived in houses, and anyway, it's really fun. It's the family that makes the difference, not the house. Some holidays that they have or do differently than we do here. They have All Saints' Day, November 1st, sort of like our Halloween the night before. But All Saints' Day, you go to the cemetery and you light candles and put flowers on the graves of your loved ones. So I lit a candle for my grandmother who passed away last year when we were there, even though her grave wasn't in Slovakia. And that's a very important holiday. They have off for a week in order to do this holiday. This is like their Thanksgiving break, since they don't have Thanksgiving. Christmas is different as well, as is every country. You bake and bake and bake and eat and eat and eat for like an entire week. I put on a lot of weight over Christmas, it's true though. You just, lots and lots of sweets. You have a very fancy sort of Christmas dinner, and you always set the table for one more person than you expect will come, in the idea that a homeless person might come and knock on your door, and if you aren't prepared to host them, then you're going to have bad luck for the entire year because you weren't hospitable on Christmas. So even though my host family had 3 members, I made the 4th, we had 5 place settings. Another tradition that you do there, which we don't have here, is you wash your hands and face in a sink that's filled with money. You put coins at the bottom, and the idea is that it brings you fortune and wealth during the year so that you won't have economic problems. So if you don't remember to do that, it's a problem. Apparently it actually comes true. I don't know, but Easter is also different. Easter was my favorite holiday in Slovakia. It is very, very different from what we do here. And what they do, it's very traditional for the men to come to the women's house. You take the women outside into the yard, and you pour a bucket of water on her, and then beat her with one of those whips. And this is considered then when they do it, they beat you with the whip, and they say, we're doing this so that you'll be beautiful and healthy all year long. It doesn't make any sense to me. It was 50 degrees outside, and they're pouring ice cold water on your head, and then they're beating you, but I got that 4 times that day. My friends just kept coming to my house and saying, we want to get the exchange student. Bring her out to the yard. It's by far my favorite holiday. Definitely the most interesting. And even though they don't don't have Thanksgiving, I chose to introduce a bit of American culture to them as well. So we did have our own Thanksgiving dinner. Took forever to find a turkey. It's the first time most of my friends had turkey and pumpkin pie, which my mother shipped to me. She shipped me canned pumpkin. It's impossible to find there, but they loved it. They love the fact that we can trade. I love the fact that we can trade cultures, that I get to learn some of their culture and they get to learn some of mine at the same time. This is my school. This is a high school. I know it looks like a college. I was very impressed. It used to be an old teaching school, and this is a high school, considering it's about the size of York Suburban, where I graduated from, so about 200 per class. That would be my schedule, and that's how they spelled my name all the time, because they don't understand that Allison is A and two L's, E-L-I-S-O-N. It's pronounced Ellison, which is as close as they can get to my name. And that would be mathematics in Slovak. One of the hardest things I have ever seen is trying to do calculus in Slovak. It doesn't go well. It's very hard. And then this would be my classmates. It works a bit like it does in elementary school. You travel with the same group of about 30 kids to all the different classes every day. So this is my 30 kids, and this was our board that when we graduated, we got to put this up on the wall. This will be here for 20, 30 years. I'll always be on the wall of that school as my picture up there. This is what a typical classroom looks like. We decorated it for prom in this picture, usually without the balloons, but this is a very typical classroom. High ceilings, big open windows, and desks where you sit with a partner. School is also more than just academics, not on a typical basis though. They don't have clubs and sports and things. But we did have a basketball tournament with different schools. They let me be the scorekeeper. So I'm with their friends who played on the team. And we also did a blood drive. We had to go give blood. Not my favorite experience. I hate needles, but did it anyway. And those are just some of my classmates and friends. On the very last day of school, we all dressed up. In America here, I danced and played flute in the marching band and concert band at Suburban. So I was able to continue dancing and playing my flute. So we were the dancers for Cinderella in English. It's called Cinderella. They do it as a Christmas show. And then I had a flute group as well. It was usually about 8 members that we played with. And we were practically famous in our town. We would perform at various events. We would perform at least every other week, if not every week, at art galleries, weddings, balls, fundraisers, church services, just normal concerts, things like that. And it got to the point where I would walk around my town and people would go, "Hey, it's the flute player who doesn't speak Slovak." And that was like, now I speak Slovak, but in October that's what it said. I know this is not supposed to be a travel log, but it's important. Travel was a big part of my life there. So just one picture, or a few. This is the Czech Republic. We had Rotary meetings there occasionally. We got to go to Auschwitz and Krakow in Poland. Our Euro tour took us to Monaco, to Barcelona, and various cities in Italy, including Venice. I also got to go to London while I was abroad. And we also got to travel a lot throughout Slovakia for various Rotary events. This is actually, I'm sure you all know Milena Kovachova, who was an exchange student here, and this was her club. This is her family and her cottage up on the mountains. I got to meet them a few times. They're very lovely people. Hiking, they're very big outdoorsmen, so we got to do a lot of hikes. My town was literally right next to a very big national park called Slovak Paradise, which is known for their ladders and things like that. And then the High Tatras, which are not nearly as high as the Rockies, but much bigger than the Appalachian Mountains. And these are the national pride of Slovakia, is this mountain chain. They're very beautiful. It dominates the entire landscape. I did have 3 host families, so this is my first host family, Pavlakovci. I had a host sister there and a mom and dad. My second family, that's pronounced Klauchovci. I had 3 host sisters and my mother and my father. And with 3 host sisters, it was just absolutely amazing. I would just come home and there would be automatic fun going on 24/7. They were some of my favorite people in Slovakia were those 3 sisters. And they are there. It was a wine tasting, I promise. Parents were there, not breaking any rules. And this is my third host family. I was only there for 6 weeks. They moved me at the end because my second host family had already fulfilled their requirement for hosting kids, but I liked it there as well, even though I was only there for 6 weeks. The very last thing that I'd like to bring up that we don't have here is Stushkova, which would be sort of like prom and graduation mixed into one ceremony. So it was very fun. It was in December, and you all dressed up, and you had a date, and it was an all-night party. We started at 6 p.m., and we finished at 5 a.m. It was all night, quite literally, but it was one of my favorite memories of Slovakia. It was such a fun time to be with your classmates and like get to bond with them really well, since it was December and it was still early on. So these are my classmates, all dressed up for the prom. Me and my date, who actually is going to Mexico this year on exchange, I inspired him to do exchange, which I was very happy about that he chose to do that. And the other part about Schiavello is that we put on a program, sort of like skits and dances and things for the parents to entertain them because they come to your prom. Kind of weird, but it's different, yeah. So I am on the left there with an afro and a vest from some decade that I wasn't alive for, and just up and dancing around, dancing, and making a complete fool of myself. And that's the whole point, is everybody makes a fool of themselves, and it just is a ton of fun that way. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for sponsoring me to be able to do this exchange. It was honestly the best experience of my life, something I will never forget and cherish forever. Thank you so much.
Absolutely enjoyed that trip. It was probably the trip of a lifetime. We'll consider some of those cultural traditions that you saw that we don't do here. We'll maybe bring some of them to the United States. I won't say which ones. And as promised last week, Jim May will come up. We have the Titanic trivia drawing.
Thank you, John. Last week I mentioned a question to be answered this week, and for those that weren't here, the question was, other than hypothermia or drowning, what was the next most common cause of death from the Titanic disaster? And the lifeboats, or the rescue boats, went out from Halifax, and when they picked up the bodies, what they determined was many of them had broken necks. The broken necks arose from people jumping from the ship with their life vest on. That sudden impact broke their necks. So we did have a few who had the answer correctly, so I'm going to ask President John if he would like to pick one of these, and I'll give the commemorative book that I was given. The answer is Karen McCormick, if she's here. I think I saw her.
Congratulations, Karen. And now to introduce our speaker, J.T. Hand.
So 10, 11, 12. 10, 11, 12. Not a counting exercise. I'll come back to it. So it was Monday, and I'd just gotten back to my office after a couple of long meetings with the boss. And I was sitting at my desk, and one of my customer service representatives approached and said they had a customer that wanted to see a manager to talk about his water bill. I really was not in a good mood to speak to a customer about a water bill. I usually like my customer service rep to take care of that without bringing it to my attention, but I acquiesced. And about 30 seconds later, a customer service representative brought a gentleman to my doorway, and he stood in my doorway and asked permission to come in. Of course, I said, "Please come in, have a seat. What can I do for you?" And the gentleman appeared to be in his mid-80s, give or take, had a blue cap on. Blue cap said World War II veteran. Perfect link. 10, 11, 12. So the gentleman had a problem with his water bill. Apparently, it appears that he had sent a check to the water company. The date on the check was July 7th, 2009. And the check was returned. It was returned as uncashable because the account with which he had tried to draw those funds, the account no longer existed. And the gentleman sat in my chair, and he was a little bit embarrassed, and his hand was shaking a little bit as he pointed to his passbook and said, "Look, I paid my water bill. It's right here. I paid my water bill. It's right here. And I could tell that a mistake had been made. And he probably inadvertently filled out the wrong check, paid it with the wrong check, and sent it in. So we cleared it up. We got to talking a little bit. He asked me, if I knew anything about World War II. I told him that I'm a veteran as well. And when I told him I was a veteran, I pointed to a couple pictures up on my wall, showed them to him. He said, "Were you in the Army?" I said, "Of course I was in the Army. The oldest, most distinguished branch of service in the United States. Of course I was in the Army." And he said, he pointed himself very proudly, "Infantry." I looked at him, I said, "Engineer." At which point he kind of dropped his head. We got the problem taken care of. We gave him credit for his water bill. And I thought about 10, 11, 12. The World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. honors the 16 million Americans who served in the armed forces of the United States and the more than 400,000 who died, and all who supported the war effort from home. Symbolic of the defining event of the 20th century, the memorial is a monument to the spirit, sacrifice, and commitment of the American people, to the common defense of the nation, and to the broader cause of peace and freedom from tyranny throughout the world. Under President John's leadership, this club will sponsor an honor flight trip to our World War II memorial on 10, 11, 12. October 11, 2012, we will sponsor a trip with a goal of transporting a couple dozen World War II veterans to their memorial. And so we thought it would be appropriate as a primer for our club's inaugural trip to Washington, D.C. and the World War II Memorial to invite Andrew Schiavello from Honor Flight Philadelphia to come talk to us a little bit today about his experience. I wanted to do an introduction of Andrew, so I asked him, "Andrew, tell me something about yourself." He's a very humble gentleman. He has a family business, delivers coffee, Philadelphia native his whole life, is a Phillies fan. But he's very humble. And I asked him, "Why did you want to get involved in Honor Flight? Why did you want to do this?" He said, "Well, my dad was a veteran. My dad served on Missouri in World War II, and I just thought this was a way to honor him." And I thought that was really telling of Andrew and his motivation behind his efforts with Honor Flight. And with that very brief introduction, I'd like to welcome Andrew Schiavello.
Well, hi, and thanks for having me. Whenever I get the opportunity to talk about Honor Flight, I run. I love it. The only problem is I never shut up about it. That's how much enthusiasm. And if you get involved with it, it's contagious. But thanks for having me. The first thing I always like to tell people is, or ask them, is how did the country so young, the United States of America is just under 240 years old, and how did the country so young become so powerful, so giving, and so rich in such a short period of time? Everybody's DNA throughout the world is the same. We're all made the same. We all have the same wants and desires. But how did this country become so great so quickly? And the answer to that question is freedom. It's the freedoms we have that were afforded through our Constitution, and it's the freedoms that our veterans preserve for us. So I'm forever grateful to the men of all the services of all the years that they're able to have our freedoms as we do. That said, welcome to Honor Flight. Honor Flight is a nonprofit charity that was started by a gentleman out in Virginia. And the next slide. Okay? And its mission statement is simple. What we want to do is we're going to transport American veterans to Washington, D.C. Every veteran that's able, willing, and capable of getting on a plane, or in our case, a bus, at no cost to the veteran. And the reason we say American veteran is an interesting story. Is we had somebody call us up down in California, and he was a German soldier during World War II, and he was captured. And part of the Geneva Convention is you can't manufacture anything to go against your homeland. So they sent him out to California to work and labor and manufacture stuff for the Pacific side of the war. Well, after the war ended, he was released and he became an American citizen. So he called up and he wanted to go on an Honor Flight trip. And after very debate at the head office, they kind of said, you know, it's reserved for the, although you were a soldier of World War II, it's reserved for the American soldiers. So that's just why, that's one of the reasons why we put in there in our mission statement for American soldiers. Next slide. This is just a quote from Abraham Lincoln: "Any nation that does not honor its heroes will not long endure." Next slide. Okay, so a little bit, how did Honor Flight get started? What it is Earl Morris was a physician's assistant in the VA hospital out in Ohio, and he was treating the World War II vets daily. So he started asking them, "Hey, have you seen your World War II memorial?" And they all said no. So being he was a pilot as well, he said, would you want to go out and see your memorial? And he thought that the vet would say, you know, let me check with my wife, let me see, blah, blah, blah. Well, the vet started crying and said yes. So he got 2 vets, popped them in their airplane, and off they went. And Honor Flight was born. Next slide. I don't know if you can see, but at the top of the slide, you'll see about 20 airplanes lined up. So what he did after that was he went around to all his friends, and he got them to each take 2 veterans out. So he went out in bunches like that, in groups like that. Then as he grew, they became commercialized. They went into commercial airline. Next slide, please. This is unfortunately we can't play it because of the sound. But this is if you can go on YouTube and find it. He was named Person of the Year, Person of the Week with ABC. And he kind of talks about the trip he went on and what it entails and how he got involved in this and everything. It's about 3 minutes long. So if you have time, maybe you just want to Google that on YouTube. Next slide, please. Okay, so it started in 2005, and the first year they transported 137 veterans. At the end of 2011, we have taken, at no cost to the veterans, 82,000 veterans from around the country through 116 hubs nationwide. So it's a very well-respected organization out there now, moving veterans down there. And, you know, our mindset here is, you know, we're a bus ride away, so it's nothing to go down, you hop on a bus, you hop on a car. But think of the people that are coming out of, you know, these small towns around the country, and, you know, San Diego and Oklahoma. You know, to get a veteran here is a lot of work and a lot of money. And there's people giving to this. One of the programs they have is called the Lone Eagle program. And what they do is they find veterans in very small, remote towns, you know, Nebraska, around the country, because they need to be honored as well. So what they'll do is they'll have a Lone Eagle Day, and they'll bring all these veterans. They do it every 3 weeks. They bring all these veterans from the little towns, and they meet in Baltimore, and then bus down to Washington. And that's a way to hit the guys that aren't to the big cities that aren't afforded the luxury of a hub. Next slide. Okay, as we say, time is of the essence. Each day we lose 1,100 World War II veterans. Again, we started out with 16 million, and at this rate, they say in about 5 or 6 years, this will be history, so to speak. There won't be any World War II veterans to chat with. What's sad about that is, you know, we're fighting Father Time. And whenever I go on these trips, you know, the stories are remarkable. I was with a guy who was captured by the Germans, and he was 30 minutes away from a gas chamber, and the Americans showed up. And it's just like, wow. You know, I was with 2 other vets that were there when they raised the flag in Hiroshima. Another gentleman went into Nagasaki right after they bombed. I mean, this is living history. This is the stuff we read about. And here I have the privilege and honor, and hopefully, you know, out of York you will too, to speak to these guys and see what they went through and what it was really like, the living conditions and how this all happened. It's fascinating. So like I said, I thought, you know, the children in the future won't have this, so, you know, we're fighting Father Time. Next slide, please. Okay, as I was saying, they've actually outlived the expectancy of a male. They say the average male expectancy is 74.4. The average age of a World War II veteran is now over 80. It's probably closer now to about 88, 89 years old. So that's the age of our heroes. Next slide. Okay, during the last 5 years, we've lost half of our World War II veterans, and we're projected to lose an additional 60%. So again, you know, sometimes I wake up at night, I can't find the vets fast enough. I can't get them down to Washington, and this is why. You know, we're losing history quickly. Next slide. This is a quote from John F. Kennedy. A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors and the men it remembers. So these are just some This is a typical day with Honor Flight Philadelphia. I think what makes Honor Flight succeed is every hub is allowed to do what it wants to do. It's given some standards to live by, but other than that, everybody can do what they want to do. And you can create your own itineraries. In Philadelphia, what we do, we have check-in at 5:30, the bus leaves at 6:30. We head down to Arlington. We're the only organization allowed to drive right up to the tomb of the unknown soldier. Normally, you have to park and take a little jitney hop. The U.S. Army has given Honor Flight permission to drive right up to the tomb because of the age of our heroes. So we get down there, then we do a wreath laying ceremony. We head over to the Women's Memorial, so we always try to find some women veterans. There, they're presented with a flag that was unfurled in the Women's Memorial. Then, not all this is in stone, but we try to go to Air Force, Iwo Jima, Korea, World War II, just to kind of mix it up. You hit the different branches. You can't hit them all, but you try to, make their days inclusive as possible. And then after World War II, we head back to Washington, and we give our heroes the heroes welcome they deserve, and traditionally, a nice dinner to welcome them back home. Next slide, please. And these are just pictures of some of our veterans. Presently, Honor Flight is looking for the World War II veterans. However, we want to honor all veterans of all services, but the reason we're focused on World War II is because of their age. We also put terminally ill veterans at the front of the line because obviously, it was only provided they could document their illness so they could jump on the next plane. Traditionally, most of the hubs have waiting lists of 2 or 3 years. In Philadelphia and the local hubs, because we're buses, it's a lot easier to keep your list clean. But generally, the waiting list is 3 years to get down to Washington, D.C. on an Honor Flight trip. Something else they do is called the Flag of Honor. So, should a family contact us, but the World War II veteran is deceased, we will bring a flag down and present it in front of their state and at the memorial and do a little ceremony down there. And that's just something we provide for the heroes we lost already. Next slide, please. So for every veteran, because of their age, we send a guardian, which is like an escort. And what they do is they ensure the safety of the veteran for their day. These guys are getting up in age. So I'm going to kind of go through what a guardian does, and I'm hoping that'll give you a flavor of what an honor trip is like. Next slide, please. Okay, so now the guardian becomes the loved one. And we always preach safety, safety, safety. So we tell the first thing is look out for the health. If you see any kind of medical symptoms, notify a trip leader right away. Next slide. Okay, we tell them, if they use a walker or a cane, put them in a wheelchair. A lot of these guys are very stoic. They won't get in a wheelchair. They think they could walk. Well, they walk, the course of the day is 4 to 5 miles. And these guys, they fight it and they fight it. And then by the end of the day, they're getting wobbly. But a lot of times we just tell them, if you get in a wheelchair, you get lots of hugs and kisses. Bang, you get in them. So, it's amazing, and they do get them. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry about the way it came out, but anyway. So, what we do just so you know, for the safety is, when the buses arrive, we get the guardians, they come off, and there's always 2 guardians at the top, 1 at the bottom, and we welcome the veterans off, we set up the wheelchairs, and that's just some of the safety, that's just some of the roles of what a guardian does. Next slide. Okay, we provide lunch, breakfast and lunch for all for all the vets throughout the day. We have plenty of water, and we constantly remind the vets to take their medicines, go to the bathroom, and drink plenty of fluid. Next slide. We tell the vets, take a lot of photographs, and listen to your vet. They have a lot of good stories to tell. This is living history. And when you get done talking to your vet, share that story with their families, because a lot of these vets don't talk about their experience in World War II. But if you could convey that to their family, sometimes it opens them up. And we've gotten phone calls from families saying, my father, after all these years, has started to talk about his experiences in the service, and it's because of Honor Flight. So there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of Honor Flight for our veterans. Soak it up, and like I said, share your story, and share your veteran with other visitors. They love, hugging them and kissing them and thanking them, and so does the veteran. Next slide. We always tell our guardians, your ears, the eyes, and the hands of the vet. If they want a bottle of water, just don't hand it to them. Pop the cap, because a lot of them don't have the dexterity anymore. If they get up out of their seat, look around, make sure they didn't drop anything. repeat announcements for them so they hear, they feel part of it. Sometimes we take blind veterans down, and the World War II Memorial has bas reliefs. You know, just walk through with them and feel with them and stay with, you know. It's just stuff to give them the comfort of their trip. Next slide. You know, there's a lot of, you know, we say beware of uneven surfaces, take ramps instead of steps. Again, safety of the vet. Okay, it's a long bus ride. I get a lot of phone calls from the vets, and they're funny. They say, you know, I walk slow. Is that okay? Well, of course, everybody on the trip's going to walk slow. It's your trip. So we always tell them, you know, get up, stretch, stay with them when you go into the restroom. That's a big, they get anxious about that. Am I going to be able to go to the bathroom? I go every 2 hours. And yes, you know, everybody's the same here at your trip. Next slide. Here's one of the memorials. We take them to Hiroshima. The Hiroshima is the world's largest bronze memorial. It's a fantastic photo opportunity. This is where we have the most accidents, and the reason being, the memorial's so big, everybody backs up, and they fall off the edge of the asphalt. So that's the problem with Hiroshima. And just some side fact, the helmets on those soldiers are 3.5 feet diameter. The rifles are 16 feet long, and the statue was welded from the inside out. So what they had to do is they had to put a secret compartment in the cartridge belt of one of the soldiers, and that's how they got out of the statue the memorial when they got done welding it. So that's a little fun fact. We go to Arlington. It's a very solemn area. You know, that's usually our first stop. They make a special section you can see across from the guards. That's a special area designated for honor flight veterans. And what they do too is, out of respect for honor flight, when they see us, as they come out to change, the guard will actually rub his heel. And that's in tribute. That's a silent salute to our honor flight veterans. And if you tell the vets, they're very touched by that, because like I say, these guys are precise. They spend 5 hours a day getting their uniforms ready. I spoke to one who was off duty. I said, "What do you do on your day off?" He said, "I polish my shoes." That's all these guys do. That's how much pride is there. And something that's interesting, when they do their last walk, if you ever go down and you see a rose on the tomb of the unknowns, they place a rose on the tomb as their last walk. The guards never have any rank because they don't want to rank the unknown. And it goes on and on. It's very fascinating, the tribute and homage they pay to our fallen soldiers. Okay, next slide, please. This is the World War II Memorial. There's 56 pillars that has all the states and the territories. On each side is a wreath of oak and wheat to signify our strength in agriculture. They're bound by a rope, signifying the unity of the nation. There's a Pacific side and Atlantic side. It's a big, big memorial. At the bottom here is the ceremony entrance. So we tell the vets, you know, we always ask the vets, can you walk a football field? And the reason we say that is the next slide is it's actually bigger than a football field. A football field can fit in the World War II Memorial, and it can also fit in the ceremony entrance. So that's the size of the World War II Memorial. And it was put in between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Monument. So you have the founder of our country and the preserver of our country. So if you think about it, it's placed in a very, very prestigious spot, the World War II Memorial. Next slide. Often Bob Dole will be down there. He'll stay there the whole day. He'll take pictures with everybody. We just tell the vets, he's ill, and you just don't touch him, just don't ask to shake his hand. But Bob Dole will sit on a stool and say hi to every veteran that comes off the bus, just thanking them. And it's amazing when you have the ones that served with him. I actually had a guy that was there when he got shot. So it's fascinating, the stories you hear from these heroes. Next slide, please. And these, I just took some pictures from our trip to Joy, the singers. At the top is the Manhattan Dolls come, they sing to him. He was actually a captain, his father was an admiral. The gentleman in the wheelchair is 103, shaking the hand with the young fellow. We had to, obviously, you can't do nothing in Philly without the mummers, right? So we had the mummers come out. So next slide, please. And this is just a little thank you to the man and woman who answered the call to duty for the dedication, spirit, commitment, and sacrifice. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. And that's my little spiel about honor flight. It's a gratifying experience. I tell you, I would just take a trip, and it's something that we're talking about for months and months and years to come. And if you have any questions, I put some brochures on your tables. Feel free to call me. JT, your competent hands with JT. This is going to be a fantastic hub. This is a fantastic organization, but nonetheless, it's a great organization, and you'll be happy the day you got involved with it. Thanks for your time, and again, thanks for having me.